Under the fading amber glow of the Ohio sky, Silver Creek looked like any other sleepy town. Cracked sidewalks, humming street lamps, and rustling leaves whispered a quiet familiarity. But that night, something shifted. It started with a boy, 16, tall for his age, shoulders still sore from basketball practice. Malik Johnson stepped off the curb and pushed open the glass door of Benson's corner store. The bell above chimed softly as the blast of cold air rushed over his sweat-soaked jersey. "Evening, Mr. Benson," he said, offering a polite nod to the elderly white man behind the counter. The shopkeeper looked up from his crossword puzzle, adjusting his glasses. "Evening, kid. Practice go all right? Coach says I might start next game." Benson gave him a tired smile. "About time. Grab yourself a drink." Malik made his way to the back coolers, the soles of his sneakers squeaking on the old linoleum. He reached for a Sprite, then snagged a bag of hot Cheetos from the shelf. His phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "You good? Be home in 10. Want anything? Just you. Safe and sound." He grinned and tapped a heart emoji, sliding the phone back into his pocket. That simple joy lasted only seconds. Outside, tires screeched. Red and blue lights flashed against the glass. The air changed. A heaviness crept in. He turned, frozen. Two police cruisers had pulled into the lot. The doors flung open. A sharp slam. Boots hit gravel. The bell above the store door rang again, but this time it wasn't a neighbor. Deputy Miller entered first, stocky, square-jawed, with a jaw clenched tight enough to crack stone. Behind him followed Officer Wade, gum snapping between his teeth, eyes already hunting. Malik didn't move. "You," Wade barked. "Step forward, sir." Malik replied, voice low. "You fit the description," Miller added. Young black male, 6 feet, dark hoodie, suspicious behavior. Malik blinked, lifted his hands slightly. "I'm wearing a practice jersey. I've been here 5 minutes. Don't get smart, boy," Wade snapped, his boots echoing as he stepped closer. From behind the counter, Mr. Benson spoke up. "Officers, he's a regular, good kid. Never caused a lick of." "We didn't ask for a character reference." Miller cut him off. "ID." Wade barked again. Malik's hands moved slowly. He reached for his wallet. "Just my school ID. I'm 16. Empty your pockets. Hands where I can see them." With care, Malik placed the drink and chips on the shelf beside him. Then his phone, his keys, a crumpled dollar bill. "That all?" Wade growled, stepping into Malik's space. "Yes, sir. You sure?" Wade's hand clamped onto Malik's wrist, twisting. "Wait, sir. Outside. Now." "Mr. Benson," Malik's voice cracked. "Call my mom, please." The old man's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Outside, the air felt colder. The cruiser's headlights cast long, stretched shadows across the parking lot. Gravel crunched under Malik's feet as they dragged him to the hood. His body met the metal with a thud. Hot steel against his cheek. "I'm not resisting," he whispered. "Stop moving." Wade roared, though Malik hadn't moved. "I'm not. Back up." Miller shouted at onlookers. But they weren't backing up. Across the lot, Angela Ruiz stood frozen in her nursing scrubs, phone raised. "Recording." The punch came out of nowhere, sharp, sudden, straight to the ribs. Malik gasped. Knees buckling. "He's resisting." Miller lied again, eyes darting between the crowd and Wade. The next sound was the click of a taser. Pain exploded through Malik's body. He screamed, collapsed. "Mama," he cried. Handcuffs snapped over his wrists. Blood trickled down his chin. "Shut up, boy," Wade snarled. "Crying for your mama now?" Angela's voice rang out. "This is a child." Carl Benson stood in the doorway of his shop, his hands white around the frame, silent, still, terrified of doing the wrong thing but ashamed of doing nothing. Malik was yanked upright, lip split, jersey torn. They shoved him into the back seat of the patrol car like a bag of garbage. Through the window, he saw Angela still filming. Inside the store's flickering light, Mr. Benson whispered to himself, barely audible, "You boys just made the biggest mistake of your damn lives." Across town, in a quiet apartment lit by nothing but a desk lamp and the glow of a laptop screen, Aisha Johnson was reviewing case files on police corruption in small-town departments. She hadn't touched her coffee in hours. The room smelled of ink and dust. Her phone buzzed. A video link. No caption. Just 3 words, Silver Creek incident. She clicked, and when the screen lit up with her son's face bloodied, beaten, crying out her name, Aisha's world cracked open. The coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. No, she whispered, but it had already begun, and Silver Creek had no idea what was coming. The video played on loop, each cycle striking her like a punch to the ribs. Her son, her only son, thrown against the hood of a police cruiser like he was nothing. His voice, small and panicked, calling out for her through sobs and clenched teeth. Aisha Johnson couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She had handled drug busts, organized crime rings, and dirty politicians. But nothing in her 20 years at the Department of Justice had prepared her for the sound of her child being TASED. 12 missed calls, 23 texts, dozens of notifications. The video had already gone viral. Silver Creek was trending for all the wrong reasons. Malik's name was in hashtags, half angry, half sympathetic. The usual battle lines were forming. But Aisha wasn't here for online debates. She stood, slowly, with purpose, gun, badge, phone, keys. She grabbed each item with robotic precision, the way she had so many times before. But this wasn't just another case. This was personal. Her black government-issued SUV roared to life in the basement garage, tires screeching as she peeled out into the Atlanta night. The digital clock glared at her. 11:07 p.m. Silver Creek was 2 hours away, too far. Every minute would feel like an hour. As the highway blurred past, her mind raced through everything she'd drilled into Malik since he was old enough to walk. Keep your hands visible. Speak clearly. Don't run. Don't argue. Memorize your rights. Practice saying yes, sir, in the mirror. Be respectful, even when they aren't. Her son had done everything right. And they'd hurt him anyway. She called her supervisor, left a message, concise, professional. Then her lawyer, then the Civil Rights Division. Her voice didn't crack, not once, but her knuckles were white around the steering wheel as she had to force herself to blink. The town limits of Silver Creek appeared just after 12:50 a.m. The sign rusted and leaning to the right like it was too tired to stand straight. She didn't bother finding parking. She pulled up directly in front of the police department, lights flashing. Inside, the night shift officer at the front desk barely looked up from his computer. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Malik Johnson," Aisha said, her voice like silk stretched over steel. "You have my son in custody. Visiting hours are over. You'll need to come back in the morning to post." She slammed her badge on the counter. Department of Justice. The golden seal glinted under the flickering fluorescent light. "I'm not here to visit," she said. "I'm here to take him home." The officer stared at the badge like it was a weapon. I'll get the chief." Aisha didn't move. She scanned the room without turning her head. Cameras, nameplates, whiteboards filled with scribbles. Everything was evidence. Everything was suspect. Chief Raymond Stokes entered moments later, all Southern charm and 2 white teeth. His uniform crisp, his cologne overpowering. He extended a hand. "Agent Johnson, what a surprise. Didn't know the feds were interested in small-town matters. Where's my son?" Her tone was flat, precise. "There was an unfortunate incident. Your boy matched the description of a robbery suspect. He got a little combative when our officers tried to talk to him. I saw the video." The smile faded slightly. "I want the body cam footage," she said. "Technical difficulties." Stokes replied with a practiced shrug. "Equipment malfunction. You know how it is. Both cameras failed at once. Stranger things have happened." Aisha stepped forward. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "I'm not here to play politics. I want my son. I want the footage. And I want a written report on my desk by morning. Try me." Something in her eyes made the chief flinch. He snapped his fingers at a deputy, who quickly disappeared into the back. They brought her to the holding cells. Malik sat hunched on a metal bench, arms wrapped around his knees, his face swollen and distant. His jersey, the one she'd saved 3 months to buy, was bloodied and torn. When he saw her, he didn't speak. He just looked at her with eyes that had aged years in a single night. She knelt beside him, her hand reaching to gently touch his cheek. "You're safe now, baby," she whispered. "They have no idea who they just messed with. By dawn, Silver Creek was stirring. Quiet murmurs spread from gas station pumps to school parking lots. The video was still circulating, but now so were rumors. That the boy's mother was some kind of cop. That she wasn't just any agent, but federal. That she'd marched into the station like she owned the place. People whispered and watched and wondered. As Aisha drove Malik home, her eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror. Every patrol car they passed made Malik shrink lower in his seat. Every bump in the road made him wince. The emergency room report sat in her briefcase. Bruised ribs, mild concussion, contusions, photos had been taken, statements given, everything documented. They following us? Malik asked, his voice hoarse. No, baby, she said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. But I'm making sure. Her phone rang. She answered through the car speaker. Agent Johnson, came the gravelly voice of her supervisor. We've been briefed on Silver Creek. I'm filing a full report on multiple civil rights violations. Evidence tampering. Stand down, he interrupted. She blinked. Excuse me. This is a local matter. The PD has jurisdiction. With all due respect, sir, they assaulted my son. They deleted evidence. They're covering up. I understand you're upset as a mother, he said, his tone condescending. But don't make this personal. She repeated, stunned. Handle it through proper channels. The line went dead. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her jaw locked. Beside her, Malik shifted uncomfortably, his lip trembling. Maybe we should just let it go. He whispered, I don't want you to lose your job. Aisha pulled into their driveway and turned to look at him. In the morning light, every bruise, every scrape stood out in full color. Tell me everything, she said. From the moment you walked into that store, and when he spoke, it came in pieces. The way they looked at him, the way they laughed, the things they said, the threats, the taunts, the way they kept hitting him, even after the cuffs were on. Her hands shook. Outside, the sun had risen, but Aisha Johnson was already wide awake, and the war for truth had just begun. The morning after the assault, Silver Creek looked almost unchanged on the surface. Same quiet streets, same peeling storefronts, same bored teens waiting for the school bus. But under the calm, something had shifted. Eyes lingered longer. Conversations paused when Aisha walked by. Her son's name had become a rumor, and her presence had become a warning. People sensed what was coming, even if they didn't yet understand its scale. Inside her home office, Aisha Johnson moved like a woman possessed. She wasn't just angry, she was precise. Files from previous misconduct cases spread across the table. Her laptop screen displayed incident reports. A whiteboard listed officer names, case numbers, missing footage, and dates. She was no longer a mother asking for justice. She was an agent documenting a pattern. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find a woman in her 50s, smartly dressed, silver streaks in her braided hair. She held a manila envelope in one hand and a determined look in her eyes. Dr. Serena Scott, she said, forensic pathologist. I saw what happened to your son. I've worked with Silver Creek PD for 15 years. I know what they've been hiding. Aisha stepped aside without a word. Serena spread out photographs across the dining room table. Autopsy reports, bruise patterns, inconsistencies in injury descriptions, names young black men who died in custody or collapsed during arrest. Each report was thin. Each file was missing data, but there were enough of them to form a spine-chilling picture. Aisha listened silently, her fingers tracing the edges of one photograph. A boy not much older than Malik, his eyes closed in death. I asked questions once, Serena said, about a kid named Terrence. They shut me down, transferred the case. Evidence vanished. And the police chief? Aisha asked. Raymond Stokes has been running this department like a private club. The officers who speak up, transferred, blackballed, some even fired. Before Aisha could respond, her phone buzzed. A new message, no name. Just a burner number. Stop digging. You want your son to stay breathing, right? She stared at it, heart steady. Then she took a screenshot and added it to her growing folder labeled threats. Later that day, Aisha met with Lucas Perez, a former local news anchor turned independent journalist. He had lost his job after a story about police misconduct. was mysteriously pulled hours before airtime. They buried it, Lucas said, sipping bad coffee in a diner booth. Then they tried to bury me, but I kept the files. He slid a thumb drive across the table. Body cam records. Dispatch audio. Some of it's corrupted, but not all. Silver Creek PD has a habit of calling technical issues every time a black teen ends up in handcuffs or worse. Show me, Aisha said. He pulled out a laptop, opened a video file. Grainy footage. Shaky audio. Officer Wade, months earlier, laughing as he threw a handcuffed boy into the back of a cruiser. Another clip. Miller mocking a woman who begged for her son not to be tased. The date stamp on one file caught her eye: March 14th, 2 years ago. A boy named Jamal Lewis, 17, died in holding. Cause of death listed as accidental overdose. No camera footage was ever released. Where's the rest? She asked. Lucas shook his head. It's always partial. A few seconds here and there. They learned early how to delete what matters. And the chief? Untouchable. His brother-in-law runs the internal affairs unit for the county. Every complaint hits a dead end. When Aisha returned home, Malik was asleep on the couch. A blanket pulled over his chest, a warm compress on his ribs. He stirred when she sat beside him. You okay? She asked. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the ceiling. I keep hearing it. The taser. The way they laughed. I thought I was gonna die, Mom. You didn't, she whispered, brushing his hair back gently. And now, they're going to wish you had kept quiet. That evening, while Malik slept again, Aisha set up 2 separate encrypted backup systems and sent copies of everything: photos, reports, videos to trusted contacts outside the DOJ. She knew what came next: retaliation, smear campaigns, maybe even suspension. She'd seen it happen before to whistleblowers, to reformers, to black agents who stepped too far out of line. She just hadn't expected it to happen to her. The knock at the door came around midnight. Not the front door, the side entrance, near the alley. Quiet, intentional. She moved carefully, hand near the drawer where her badge and service pistol used to be. But she wasn't armed anymore. The badge was in a safe, her gun locked away, per DOJ guidelines while under internal review. She cracked the door. Nobody was there. Just an envelope on the ground. Inside, 3 printed photos. All of Malik. 1 walking to school, 1 at the gas station, 1 in his hospital bed. Taken through the window. There was no note. Aisha didn't flinch. She didn't call the cops. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and typed a single line into a new folder. They're watching him. Which means I need to watch them harder. By the time the sun rose over Silver Creek, Aisha Johnson had compiled her first formal report. 27 incidents spanning 10 years. All involving the same officers. All involving young black males. All involving mysteriously lost footage, inconsistent testimonies, or closed investigations with no explanation. And at the top of the list, in red marker, Malik Johnson, attempted cover-up, excessive force, racial profiling, physical assault. As she saved the file and backed it up again, her phone buzzed with another anonymous message. Last warning. She smiled without warmth. They were running out of time. Because Aisha wasn't alone anymore. She had allies. She had evidence. And now, she had purpose. Silver Creek had always buried its secrets. But Aisha Johnson was digging them up, one name, one file, one truth at a time. The temperature in Silver Creek had dropped. But inside the police department, pressure was building like steam behind a sealed door. Chief Raymond Stokes stood behind his office window, watching the parking lot below. The morning sun spilled over the badge on his desk, but there was no pride in his eyes, only calculation. Aisha Johnson had become more than a problem. She was a risk, and in a town like Silver Creek, risks were managed. Stokes picked up the phone and called in Deputy Wade and Officer Miller. They entered stiffly, eyes avoiding his. She's not letting it go, the chief said. You two clean it up. Miller cleared his throat. You want us to? I want her discredited. Make her look unstable, threatening. Hell, say she's coercing witnesses. Just get ahead of this before it gets to the feds. Wade grinned. We've got someone who owes us a favor. 1 call, and she'll be on a no-fly list by sundown. Stokes nodded slowly. Do it quiet. No more headlines. But it was already too late for quiet. Aisha was in the courthouse record's office when the first fire broke. Not literal flames, at least not yet, but a digital one. Her email accounts were locked. Her DOJ badge flagged as under review. Her security clearance suddenly listed as temporarily suspended. She called the Washington field office. Her contact, Special Agent Marina Cole, answered. Aisha, they're coming for your credentials. Someone filed an internal complaint, says you've been leaking classified material to the press. That's a lie, I know. But they've got your login hitting Lucas Perez's IP address. Because I sent him redacted public records. Everything was legal. Marina lowered her voice. That doesn't matter right now. You're in the system. You need to disappear for a few days. I can't. They're watching my son. I'll send you a safe house address. Don't use your phone. Don't contact media. Let this cool down. Aisha hung up and stared at the courthouse wall, gray, sterile, uncaring. She knew the playbook. Smear, isolate, erase. But she wasn't playing defense anymore. That night, at the House of Second Chances, the community center where Malik had once volunteered, a group gathered. Angela Ruiz was there, her nursing scrubs stained with the day's shift. Carl Benson showed up, eyes down, head in hand. Serena Scott stood beside the old chalkboard, pointing to printed photos taped to its surface, bruises, reports, timelines. They're trying to make her vanish, Serena said. Which means she's close. Lucas Perez set up a camera in the corner. This is no longer just a story. It's a reckoning. From the back of the room, a voice spoke gravelly, hesitant. An older man in a faded army jacket stepped forward. My name's Elroy Davis, retired officer. I was on the force with Stokes. I saw what they did to Jamal Lewis. The boy never overdosed. He was left in a cell for 12 hours without medical care. After Miller slammed his head against the wall, Serena's eyes met his. Would you testify? I already wrote a statement. I've kept it hidden for years. But now, I want to do what's right. Carl Benson stepped forward, shaking. I'll speak too. I saw them grab Malik. I didn't stop it. I should have. Angela squeezed his hand. Then let's stop them now. Meanwhile, Malik sat on his porch, the night pressing in. He hadn't left the house in days. Not since the threats. Not since a brick shattered his bedroom window with a note that read, "Snitchies disappear." But tonight, he wasn't hiding. He walked to the mailbox and found a letter without a stamp. Inside, a photo of him on the school steps. Circled in red, he took a deep breath, then pulled out a Sharpie and wrote across the picture, "You think fear will stop me? You made me stronger." He posted the image to his private story, then turned and walked inside, jaw tight, step steady. At the same time, in a quiet suburb 30 miles away, Aisha stood in the shadow of a cabin safe house. She had disappeared just long enough to gather proof from an off-grid drive. Inside it, an audio file backup copy of the dashcam from Malik's arrest. It was grainy, but the words were clear. Wade's voice. Kid thinks he's a lawyer's son. Let's show him what that buys in Silver Creek. Then a laugh, a thud. Malik's cry. It was damning. She smiled and sent a copy to 5 journalists. One in New York, one in Atlanta, one at a local alt weekly, one at a national civil rights org, one directly to Marina. She added a note. I'm done playing quiet. Time to burn it down. And for the first time in weeks, Aisha Johnson slept. Not in fear but in readiness. The next move belonged to her, and it was coming with fire. The morning air was thick with tension. It had been less than 24 hours since the audio leak dropped online, but already, Silver Creek was buzzing like a hornet's nest. The audio was raw, unmistakable, and it hit harder than anyone expected. Malik's voice, trembling and in pain. Officer Wade's voice, unmistakably smug. And behind it all, the sound of state-sanctioned cruelty laid bare for the world to hear. Aisha Johnson watched it unfold from the safety of the cabin. Her laptop screen a cascade of headlines. DOJ agent leaks brutal police audio. Small town. Big secrets. The Silver Creek scandal. Malik Johnson speaks through the static. Major networks picked it up. Activists reposted it. Celebrities tweeted solidarity. But what struck her most was a short video Malik, filmed by a neighbor, walking out of his house that morning wearing a hoodie that read in bold letters, They tried to silence me. The video had already hit 2 million views. In the comment section, one message repeated over and over, "We believe you, Malik." Across town, inside the Silver Creek Police Department, chaos bloomed. Chief Stokes stood over a conference table littered with printouts. Internal Affairs had been notified by the state attorney general. News vans circled like vultures. Protesters had begun to gather outside the courthouse steps, holding signs, chanting, "Justice for Malik, fire Wade and Miller, we are not afraid." Stokes slammed a fist on the table. "Find out who leaked that file." An officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we did. That backup server wasn't wiped. Someone must have, then wipe it again. And get Wade and Miller off the street now. Put them on leave. I don't care what it looks like. But Chief, now." Aisha knew the clock was ticking. The moment the public pressure hit, institutional spin would follow. They'd reframe the story, say it was an isolated incident, blame poor training, offer a resignation or two and sweep the rest under bureaucratic rugs. So she went on the offensive. She uploaded the full archive, every report, every suppressed file, every officer's misconduct history to an encrypted public database under the name Project Watchtower. The files weren't just about Malik anymore. There were names like Terrence, Jamal, Deont, and Marsha Black, teenagers brutalized, silenced, or forgotten. And the officers responsible. A recurring pattern, light suspensions, internal exoneration, and years of impunity. At the top of the list, Chief Raymond Stokes. The site exploded. That evening, a crowd gathered outside the Silver Creek Town Hall, a vigil. Hundreds of candles, soft gospel music played from portable speakers. And then, unexpectedly, Malik stepped forward. He didn't have a speech prepared. No camera crew, no script. Just a mic and the weight of what had happened. "My name is Malik Johnson," he began, voice steady but raw. "A few weeks ago, I was just a kid trying to get home. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But to them, I was already guilty." The crowd grew quiet. They tased me, punched me, called me names I won't repeat. And then they told me to keep quiet or they'd finish what they started. Aisha stood at the edge of the crowd, hand over her mouth. "But I'm not staying quiet. Not for them. Not for fear. I'm standing because I know there are others like me who didn't get to walk away. I got lucky. They didn't." A beat of silence. Then applause. Then chanting. People lifting their candles, some in tears. In the background, a mural artist began sketching outlines on the side of the community center wall. Malik's face, eyes open and unbroken. But not everyone in Silver Creek was applauding. Later that night, Wade and Miller met in an abandoned gas station on the edge of town. Nervous, pacing, paranoid. "They're coming for us," Miller said. "Stokes isn't returning calls. I ain't going down alone," Wade growled. "You hear me? If they drag me in, I take Stokes with me. He was there that night with Jamal. He signed the suppression." Miller rubbed his face. "You think he'll let that happen?" A pause, a rustle outside. They turned. But the lot was empty. Still, both drew their guns. Back at the cabin, Aisha's phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. This time, it was a video. A man in uniform, Officer Miller, sitting alone in his car, whispering into the camera, "I can't live with this anymore. What we did, it was all sanctioned. Not just Malik, not just Jamal. There's a list. I'm sorry. I'll come forward." The timestamp, 11:38 p.m. She checked the clock. 11:41. He was still alive. She grabbed her keys. Tomorrow, Silver Creek would either cover him up or let the truth come out screaming. Aisha drove through the backroads of Silver Creek, her headlights cutting through the fog like searchlights. Miller's confession still rang in her ears, not just the words, but the desperation in his voice. She knew that tone. It was the sound of a man who had already decided this might be his last night alive. She arrived outside his house at 12:02 a.m. The neighborhood was still. Too still. No porch lights. No car in the driveway. But the front door was cracked open. Her heart dropped. She approached slowly, hand instinctively resting where her badge used to be. Inside, the house was quiet, dark. A faint hum of the refrigerator, nothing else. She called out softly, "Miller?" No response. She stepped in and immediately saw the trail. A smear of blood across the floor. A boot. Then, in the kitchen, the source, Officer Miller, slumped against the cabinet, a bullet hole clean through his shoulder. His eyes fluttered open when she knelt beside him. "You're not dead," she whispered. "Not yet." He groaned. "They tried." "Who?" He swallowed hard. "Wade said I was going soft. Stokes ordered the cleanup. Did you record everything?" Miller nodded weakly. "In the garage, laptop, behind toolbox. Password's my badge number." She called an ambulance, wiped her prints from the doorknobs, and dashed to the garage. The laptop was there covered in dust, but intact. She shoved it into her backpack and was out the door before the sirens arrived. She didn't wait around to explain. There wasn't time. By 8 a.m., Miller was in protective custody. Aisha had convinced Marina at the DOJ to pull a few strings off her limited immunity. In exchange for testimony, Marina didn't like it, but she saw the larger picture. "We're going to need a full-scale investigation," Marina said. "This goes beyond Silver Creek. If they were doctoring reports, silencing officers, deleting footage, that's RICO territory." Aisha opened the laptop in front of her. The desktop background was a photo of Miller and his daughter, maybe 5 years old. On a fishing trip, she clicked a folder labeled Fallback, and there it was. Video after video. Memos. Internal emails. One in particular stood out. A scan of a signed directive from Chief Raymond Stokes, dated 4 years ago, effective immediately. "All officer cameras shall be reviewed prior to archiving. Any footage deemed compromising or contextually misleading must be scrubbed. Use corrupted file protocol. Secure copies to HQ Vault." It was damning. Policy-level cover-up. Top-down corruption. She stared at the document for a long time, then hit upload all. Project Watchtower would now show the full scope, not just brutality, but institutional rot. Not just rogue officers, but a criminal machine dressed in blue. By noon, national networks had descended on Silver Creek. CNN vans parked beside makeshift protest camps. Civil rights attorneys arrived. Dozens of DOJ agents. The town square looked like a press briefing about to erupt into a rally. Malik stood beside Aisha, nervous but steady. He'd been asked to speak again. She touched his shoulder. "Don't try to be perfect. Just be honest." He nodded. The microphone was already hot when he stepped forward. "I used to think this town would protect me," he said. "That if I followed the rules, if I studied hard, if I stayed out of trouble, nothing bad would happen. But I was wrong." His voice didn't shake. "What happened to me wasn't just one bad cop. It was a system that saw my skin before it saw my face, that treated me like a threat before I opened my mouth." Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. "And now that system's afraid. Because we're not scared anymore." Behind him, the mural on the community center was now complete. Not just Malik's face, but faces of others: Jamal, Marcia, Deont, Terrence. Their names scrawled like battle scars across the bricks. Aisha turned to Serena Scott, who stood nearby, eyes wet with pride. "This is just the beginning," Aisha said. Serena nodded. "But for once it's the right kind of beginning." Across town, Chief Stokes watched it all on a muted flat screen in his office. He was alone. Wade had vanished. Miller had flipped. His phone had stopped ringing. He picked up his badge and turned it in his hands, then set it down, then pulled a hard drive from his drawer and smashed it against the edge of the desk. Too little. Too late. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. 2 unmarked sedans. Stokes sighed, straightened his jacket, and walked to the door. When he opened it, Aisha Johnson was standing there beside 2 federal agents. "Chief Raymond Stokes," she said, her voice clear. "You're under investigation for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud, destruction of evidence, and abuse of power." He stared at her. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." She continued. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence said it all. And as they led him out, Silver Creek held its breath, for justice was finally at the door. The courtroom was packed, but not in the way Silver Creek remembered from its sleepy, small-town trials. Rows of journalists lined the benches with laptops open, their screens reflecting every twitch and flinch. A dozen national outlets had flown in. Civil rights observers took notes from the gallery. Local residents, many who had lived in fear or silence, showed up dressed in black. A quiet uniform of solidarity. At the center of it all sat Chief Raymond Stokes. Handcuffed, his uniform traded for a gray county-issued suit. The lines in his face looked deeper now, the smug confidence worn thin. His lawyer sat stone-faced beside him, the pile of evidence against them taller than any defense they could mount. Across the aisle, Aisha sat behind the prosecution table as a DOJ consultant, not a witness. Her presence was symbolic, now a living reminder that one person's refusal to stay silent could collapse an empire of lies. Malik sat beside her, flanked by his mother and attorney. He wore the same hoodie as before. They tried to silence me. Cameras zoomed in on it every time he shifted in his seat. The judge, a stern woman brought in from another jurisdiction to avoid bias, called the courtroom to order. Opening statements will begin. The prosecutor spoke first. Building the case slowly, methodically for years, he said, this department operated not as a defender of law, but as an enforcer of fear. It wasn't about justice, it was about control, about silencing those who dared speak out, about erasing footage, threatening witnesses, and punishing truth. He turned and pointed at the defense, and at the top of that rot stood Raymond Stokes, a man who didn't just look away, he orchestrated it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. When it was the defense's turn, Stokes's attorney tried a different tactic. My client acted within the limits of departmental policy. He didn't write the system, he operated it. This is a witch hunt, political, emotional, driven by activists, not facts. But the facts came fast. Emails, audio files, confessions, the videos from Miller's laptop, testimonies from 5 former officers who had once worked under Stokes, all now under immunity deals. And then Malik took the stand. He sat under the white lights, palms sweaty, knees bouncing. The prosecutor guided him gently. Can you tell us what happened the night of your arrest? Malik's voice was soft but firm. I stopped for a soda after practice. I wasn't doing anything wrong. They said I looked like a suspect. Then they threw me down, called me names, tased me when I reached for my ID. The courtroom fell into an eerie hush. Did they say anything about your mother? Yes, one officer said. Let's see if Agent Johnson's badge can stop this. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you, Malik. The defense attorney stood. Malik, is it true you had marijuana in your backpack? No. Have you ever been in trouble before? No. You're saying the officers lied. Malik leaned forward, staring straight into the lawyer's eyes. I'm saying they tried to kill who I was before anyone ever asked my name. Gasps again. Even the judge leaned back slightly. The verdict came swiftly. Just 8 days of trial. The jury found Chief Stokes guilty on all charges: obstruction, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. Officer Wade, captured by border agents trying to flee to Mexico, faced separate indictments. Several others in the department resigned or were placed under internal investigation. But the punishment was only part of the story. Silver Creek began to change. The community center was renamed the Deont Lewis Justice Center in honor of one of the earliest documented victims of the department's abuses. It housed youth legal clinics, after-school programs, and civil rights education. Aisha declined all press interviews. She'd done her part. Her real reward was quieter: the return of her badge, her clearance restored, and a seat at the newly formed Federal Civil Rights Oversight Committee. She would now help identify and dismantle patterns like those in Silver Creek before they spread. And Malik, he went back to school, finished senior year, got into Morehouse, on scholarship. But before he left, he stood on the courthouse steps one last time. Reporters had begged him to speak. He said only this: you don't change a system by being quiet. You change it by surviving loud. The crowd erupted. And somewhere in the back, just for a moment, Aisha smiled, not the cautious smile of someone guarding her truth, but the full, unburdened grin of a mother watching a storm pass and seeing the sky open up again. The silence was over. And in its place, a new sound had taken hold, voices rising, stories told. Justice echoing through every street of Silver Creek.